Okay, so I'm actually starting here. Everybody's like doing other things. I'm like, okay, sure, why not? We're going to be talking about today. Well, apparently, I'm going to be talking about the Hermes Trismegistus and the relationship that arise in philosophy, in alchemy, in astrology, and in magic. And so once again, I have been given the impossible task. I'm trying to describe something that most people wouldn't dare to try to describe. And I'm kind of thinking maybe I shouldn't either, because a lot of the ideas are almost incomprehensible. And trying to bring that to a public context is not as an easy task. But I'm going to try my best and see what happens. So under the stars, I actually do see a star looking at me through the night. I will go ahead and talk about this topic. So first of all, we will go into the fact that Hermes Trismegistus is a combination of two deities, the Greek god Hermes and the Egyptian god Thoth, both of them connected to magic and the art of writing. In many cases, of course, the idea of writing and magic, as you can understand, is the act of creating something. So you can see how these ideas indeed connect.
You mean writing in the sense of letters?
Well, writing as in letters.
Letters, like
characters. You know, in fact, part of the higher magic is connected to writing things. And then, of course, we move on to third degree from there. The earliest Hermetic texts focus upon alchemy. They focus upon astrology, and they focus upon invoking the spirits. So that's kind of where we'll go at first. And then we'll move on to the more philosophical Hermetic writings. During the Greco-Roman era, we'll talk about theurgy, we'll talk about divine magic, we'll talk about all sorts of different ideas as we go through. So let's just kind of know where we're going. Let's start going into the heart of the matter. The name Hermes Trismegistus is first mentioned in the minutes of a meeting. That sounds like a business meeting, right? The minutes of a meeting of the Council of the Ibis cult. They met together and they gathered in Memphis, not Memphis, Tennessee, Memphis, Egypt, in the year 172 BCE. And that's the first time that they mention this name. However, we do find an earlier form of this name earlier on, for example, in the Temple of Esna, where it says Thoth the Great, the Great, the Great. And last I checked, that looks like, 3 times, does it not? So there's a possibility it may go back earlier. Some people will say that the name goes back all the way to the Mycenaeans. Kind of a slippery slope there, although there is in Linear B a T, Re, Si, Ro, E, which means thrice greatest. And the thrice greatest, so there was a deity who is understood as the thrice greatest one. And many people say that it's connected to an earlier form of Hermes. So, but again, a lot of the information is circumstantial at best. As I said in short, Hermes Trismegistus is a combination of different two major deities, a Greek one and an Egyptian one. But it's also important to understand that the Thoth was connected to human souls, and so was Hermes, and connected to bringing those souls into the afterlife. So you're kind of seeing where we're going with this one, right? Of course, the story goes, right, that Hermes at one time, people tend to do this. They oftentimes will say, especially in ancient times, they say that a lot of the gods were once humans. And then eventually they became gods. It's over a period of time. And so many of the Greeks will say a lot of the gods just happen to live really long lives. and share their wisdom and eventually graduated to godhood. This is the case of Hermes Trismegistus, where they will say that Hermes Trismegistus met Moses, and Hermes Trismegistus met Pythagoras. Now, already you should be looking at me a little strange because I said the word Moses. That's like, wait, but that's Jewish. The belief system of Hermes Trismegistus, the Hermetic writings, does access and connect to some forms of Hellenistic Judaism. And so Moses will be within these writings. So, yeah, I mean, really, Hermeticism is a synthesis of so much in the way of thought. In fact, I just, me, I just can't resist, so here I go, not resisting. How much thought? So, you see, Hermes Trismegistus, it connects with, of course, obviously, the Greco-Roman deities. It connects to the Egyptian deities, the most basic level. And so there are mythologies that are woven in. So you're going to have these conversations between Hermes Trismegistus and Isis or others, within, or even Greek deities. So you have that. But then on top of that, you're going to have another layer, and that is philosophy. And you're going to see a lot of Platonism in the viewpoints of the Hermetic writings. And a particular brand is pretty popular, and that is called Middle Platonism. Middle Platonism is one of my favorite topics. And if you ever want to hear a talk that goes on forever and I never can stop, that will be my Middle Platonic talk, because hardly anybody knows about it. And that turns out to be one of my major interest areas. Middle Platonism, what it does is it takes ideas of Plato, it takes ideas of Aristotle, it takes ideas of Neo-Pythagorean thought, it takes popular ideas, and it just kind of throws them all together in this big stew. And out of this great big stew arises Hermeticism. Interesting, huh? So you're going to have magical aspects even interwoven in there as well. And eventually Middle Platonism will turn into Neoplatonism, but we're not there yet. But Middle Platonism, for example, this is something most people don't know either, and that is much of Christianity at its basic level has many Middle Platonic philosophical ideas that are there. There's a reason why I'm bringing this up. Also, it turns out that Judaism connected with Middle Platonic thought. What will happen is you got Judaism, and then Judaism goes to Egypt, yay. And then what happens is they become kind of mixed with the Greeks a little bit, right? And to the point where they started forgetting Hebrew. So they translate the Hebrew Bible into Greek, and that's called the Septuagint. And so the Septuagint, deals, what it does is that now there's a transformation, because now that you have the Septuagint, you now have Greek Jews looking at the Septuagint, and they're going to start understanding these Jewish ideas in Greek terms. So Greek philosophy will slip into Hellenistic Judaism by way of Middle Platonism. You want a name? I'll give you a name. Philo of Alexandria. He lived from the 1st century BCE to the 1st century CE. He is one of those individuals that talks about and goes into Hermeticism. He talks about the idea that you have the monad, the one, and you have the logos, which is the divine word, and has nothing to do with Christianity. You guys getting where I'm going? So what will happen is that milieu is already there. So then what's going to happen is, of course, in Christianity will be influenced by Middle Platonism. For example, if you take a look at the prologue of the Gospel of John, we can go through that and you're going, oh yeah, okay. And then later on, when it comes to Middle Platonism, you're going to have the ideas of trinities within Middle Platonism. And so it will actually take Middle Platonic thoughts to actually define the Trinity in Christian terms. You guys want me to give you a name? I'll give you a name. His name is Numenius. And Numenius came up. That's right. He came up with an idea of understanding various hypostases of the three from a pagan perspective, and that will be used for Trinitarian thought going into the first part of the 4th century. Is this fascinating? So from this Middle Platonism, there's a reason why I'm bringing it up, Hermeticism partakes of. You know, but the problem is you're going to hear a lot of ideas when it comes to Middle Platonism, concerning Hermeticism. You're going to hear a lot of ideas and you're going to think, Christianity influenced it. So Christianity influenced this idea within the Hermetic writings. And it's like, no, this is Middle Platonism is influencing Hellenistic Judaism. Middle Platonism is influencing Christianity. Middle Platonism is influencing Hermetic writings. And unfortunately, what will happen is you're going to hear ideas. You're going to say, oh, this is obviously a Christian import. And I want to say very quickly, it's not. Sure, you're going to have some later mixing about, because you can't help it, but the heart is different. Is that making sense? In fact, in many cases, those who ascribe to Hermes Trismegistus saw Christianity as a rival. And I'll quote that later on. Is this fascinating? All right. So, okay, sorry, that was my rabbit trail. Got down the rabbit hole a little bit, but there you have it. Okay, so what will happen is that let's go there. Some early Christian writers, one by the name of Clement of Alexandria. He lived in the 2nd into the 3rd century. He believed the Egyptians had 42 sacred writings dedicated to Hermes, and that it represented all the priest knowledge of ancient Egypt. It's pretty amazing. This is a Christian writer assessing Hermetic writings during the time of the 2nd century. Okay, much of the ancient materials attributed to Hermes arrives around the 2nd century BCE in Egypt and afterwards. So it is an Egyptian phenomenon. Okay, in fact, a writer by the name of Firmicus Maternus, that's a great name. Firmicus Maternus, he asserts that Hermes Trismegistus was the one who founded astrology. So that he received this knowledge from the prophet Ibis. So generally, Hermeticism teaches a few fundamentals. Here we go. Here's the fundamentals of Hermeticism. You guys ready? I'm going to give 1, 2, 3, 4 points. Okay, that's my Shatner thing. Okay. All right. So, okay. So, sorry. So, yeah, Hermeticism, first of all, teaches that the microcosm is oneself. We are the microcosm, while the macrocosm is the universe. The macrocosm is the universe. So the macrocosm is as the microcosm, and vice versa. Within each lies the other, and through understanding one, usually the microcosm, a person may understand the other. And this, of course, is mentioned in many Hermetic writings. Even the Emerald Tablet of Hermes Trismegistus will go there. In fact, it will say that which is below corresponds to that which is above, and that which is above corresponds to that which is below, to accomplish the miracle of the one thing, that we're all one, that's all connected. Does that make sense? You guys got that? Yeah, pretty interesting, right? So that whatever happens on any level of reality, whatever happens, like physical or emotional or mental or spiritual, right? It happens on the other end. Everything is all connected. Ready for number 2? Number 2, Hermeticism ascribes the idea of the journey of the soul, right? Which, of course, has ended up in the material world. And we have to seek gnosis, knowledge. Ooh, that sounds like Gnosticism. Yeah. You mean there's Gnosticism mixed up with Hermeticism? Well, guess what? Remember I talked about the Middle Platonism? Yeah. You know who gets mixed up in there too? Gnosticism. And Gnosticism, it does its own thing. And what it does is it likes to connect with Judaism, Sethian Gnosticism, and then it likes to connect with Christianity, Valentinian Gnosticism. But there's even pagan Gnosticism. But because Egypt is such a mix, it will connect, with Hermeticism. It's all part of the same stew. But so much of those ideas still have the undergirding of a Middle Platonic idea. Isn't that interesting? And you're going, well, can you go further on the Middle Platonic idea? Oh, yeah. In fact, by the end of this lecture, you'll be just like, okay, stop, no more. You'll have it memorized. You'll probably know more than your own theology after a while, because I'm going to be going over this over and over again. Does that make sense? Okay, so journey of the soul, knowledge. And so the idea is we are strangers in a strange land. And we seek to return to where we were before, right? To that sacred chorus, that happy place, that blissful place. Okay, so that's so basically journey of the soul and knowledge. Got it, gnosos. Number 3, the divine is both immanent and transcendent within all things. Immanent, transcendent within nature. It is basically good or the good. Okay, so you got that. That was easy, right? Maybe. And of course, what's the opposite of good? And a lot of you will go evil, right? Well, hopefully not that gleeful, but better not. Well, if you're Middle Platonic, you say what's the opposite of good? You say the absence of good. And so you'll say like maybe chaos, because good is connected with order. Good is connected with beauty. Good is connected with perfection. Good is connected with, obviously spirituality, satisfaction, for perfection. And of course, the opposite would be chaos, as they say in Greek, kakos, which of course, from which we get the word cacophony. Ah, there you go. That's right. And so we want to go more toward kalos, right? More of the beauty. So we get, of course, calligraphy. Okay. So anyway, number 4, a part of the process of being released involves the contemplation of nature. This is actually one of my favorite parts, and I'll expand upon it. But about Hermeticism is it's all about you get into nature. You enjoy nature, and the attributes of the highest of the high will be there. You will sense it because it is immanent, it is transcendent, and you can see it through what has been made. Unlike Gnosticism, where you have a duality of good and evil, right? Hermeticism is good and absence of good, but you still can have good within the natural realm. But with Gnosticism, you have that the material world is evil. Does that make sense? That's the big difference. You want to say what's the difference between Gnosticism and Hermeticism? That is, there it is, right there. So you have good, and you have the absence of good. It's potential. It's possible for you to have within nature, what you see, it is good. It's just not perfect, but and it can lead to further perfection. But in Gnosticism, the whole material world is wicked or evil. Now you're going to say, yeah, but Dr. Rifa, there's exceptions. Oh yeah, of course there's exceptions. So why is that? Well, you don't make this exception the rule, because you're going to get some people who are former Gnostics or still Gnostics going, hey, I think I'm going to follow Hermeticism. And they're going to import the evil idea into their writings. Does that make sense? Not Zosimus of Panapolis or anybody like that. I don't know why I'm saying these words, but you're going to get a few people who bring their baggage with them. But is that true with all different beliefs, right? When people convert to a belief system, they're going to bring what they had before. So there is exceptions, and I know those listening go, "Oh, there's this exception, that's exception," but generally, no. The Hermetic code, look at the writings together, and it's not as negative, because you got to connect with nature in order to go further afield. And I love this because they spend a lot of time not only looking at the trees and and the beauty of the world, they spend a lot of time looking at the stars. They just stare at the stars. And yes, I'm going to give you quotes of them just looking at the stars and being transported with sense of wonder of what's up there. And I love that. And also another part of Hermeticism in that is that when you go out into nature, it's the idea of being silent in nature and just listening. Silent in nature and just listening. Because when you get to the highest of the high and you're contemplating the monad, the one above all the others, there's no words to speak anymore, right? You're beyond words. And so it's just simply the state of being. Is that interesting? So that's nature. Okay. Number 5, Hermeticism teaches that we have the power to influence the more subtle realms, via various techniques. So you don't mess with the highest of the high, the monad, the one, but you can work on the lower levels. We'll talk about that in a little bit. So you can do rituals and so forth to the lower levels. We'll talk about exactly what those lower levels look like in a few moments in detail. But when it comes to the highest of the high, and I want to make it very clear, you have in Hermeticism, the idea is you got, this is fun, monotheism, polytheism. What? So is it monotheistic or polytheistic? And the answer is yes. It's like, what? Wait, what? So you have a polytheism that are different reflections of the one that's above all things, which has a monotheistic aspect to it. So they will talk about God, but God has different levels as it moves down. Does that make sense? So yeah, so you'll have gods, but you'll also have the God. So when it comes to the God, hetheos, right? When it comes to the God, you don't do anything with that high God. You don't tell it what to do. You just leave it alone. What you do is you pray, you meditate in silence, you sing hymns, but no magic, no magic. You do the magic further down, but not further up. Does that make sense? You guys got it? So there is, it's a combination. It's the best of both worlds. You can see where a lot of ideas of Christianity can be seen, or Judaism can be seen in Hermeticism, but it's not that. They're not borrowing. It's just another system altogether. Oh, I just gave away number 6. Number 6, of course, is while it appears polytheistic, still there is an ultimate monotheism. I just went there. So there we are. I'm ahead of myself. That's not good, right? Okay, so there are many packages, many different kinds of writings. The earliest ones are known as the technical hermetical texts. Technical hermetical texts. Those are the early ones. And then the later ones are the philosophical ones. The philosophical. So you got the technical ones. Those are the ones that deal with astrology. Those are the ones that deal with alchemy. And then you have, of course, later on, maybe there should be some kind of philosophical ideas behind it. And then, of course, that's what happens there. So let's begin with the technical Hermetic texts. Yeah, because that's the earliest. Okay, first of all, astrology. So the writings of Hermes Trismegistus does connect to astrology. So the idea is they stress a knowledge of the operation of the stars and planets, that it is vital to understand the planets in order to see how the universe works. The movement of these heavenly bodies transcends mere physics. They have a deeper symbolic meaning. And these meanings that you see in these movements, they have to be interpreted. In fact, the ideas within the mind of the all, the ideas within the mind of God can be discerned through the symbols or signs charted in the movements of these celestial bodies. And you can see how this influences things on Earth. However, this is when it gets interesting. However, the stars do not dictate our fate. They do not dictate our fate. What they do is they merely show us where the tendencies of the universe are going. And then what we do is we anticipate those trends, but we're not governed by them if we have the higher knowledge. If we have the spiritual knowledge, then we can, we can mitigate, we can navigate those streams of uncertainty and get to the other side. But if you are more physical oriented, if you're more mundane, part of the material realm, then yes, you're going to go with whatever the flow is, and be up in the bottom of the river, the mud of the earth. Okay, it's interesting because the writings of Hermes Trismegistus, many of them ascribe that when it comes to astrology, although some claim that he came up with it, they claim that Zoroaster came up with it. Now you should be looking at me going, wait, Zoroaster? Well, that's strange. That's Zoroastrianism. What's that do in Hermetic writings? Yes, another stream that's flowing in from the Persians. Are you seeing how this is really, so much synchronicity going on with many different beliefs? They also, of course, within astrology, they teach the idea of cosmic sympathy. The cosmic sympathy doesn't mean like, aw, look at those stars. It's nice, yeah. I feel sorry for that one over there, just so dark. Okay, the idea is that God is one, but what happens is there is a hierarchy of beings. And so God is at the top, and then God is the monad, he is the one, and what happens is what emanates from him, so view him, as I always say, the view is that he is like the sun, right? And the rays of the sun are called the pleroma, which, by the way, is also used in the Gospel of John. And they use the word for fullness of God, and the word is pleroma. And the pleroma connects to what's called the intelligible world. The intelligible world. And so what will happen is you'll have these emanations within this pleroma. By the way, the same thing for Gnosticism, the same thing for Platonism, Middle Platonism. So this is kind of part of the spiritual architecture. So you have the intelligible world, and eventually, we'll go more in detail later on, it moves from the intelligible world into what's called the sensible world. And so what happens is the creative and the beneficial powers of God flow through the intelligible world and then into the sensible world from the sun, but the sun, which is him. But within that, within the emanations, you're going to have a creator or maker deity known as the demiurge. And the demiurge is the maker. He's the one who forms the physical universe. Does that make sense? So you got the monad, the one who creates the spiritual universe. And of course, the emanations, the monad going through, which is the pleroma. And then emanating from that, you have the architect, the demiurge, who is the maker, and he is the one who makes the material universe, and that connects to the sensible universe. You guys got that? That's kind of how things operate. Good. Okay, moving that. So there are basic change sympathies connected between us and the universe up there. And of course, that connects to the idea of cosmic sympathy. So that means that everything is connected. There are chains of correspondence, and they have affinities to one another. In fact, each animal, plant, mineral, or part of a human, right, corresponds to a particular planet or a god whom they can use to influence. Of course, obviously, you have to provide the right formula, but all things connect, at least within the sensible universe. Remember, we don't touch the monad, right? Okay, good. Meanwhile, you have daemons. Now, we got to be careful about this word, daemons. You hear the word, you're going, oh, you mean demons. So we're talking about demonology here, right? Well, yes. Basically, the word demon is spirit. Right? So in ancient times, you had agathos daemon, like the good spirit that influenced Socrates. That makes sense? You have good spirits, and then you got bad spirits, right? So bad demons. So good demons, bad demons. That's all it is. What will happen is that with the advance, of course, Judaism and then Christianity, they discover a good name for the good demons. They would call them angels. And then by default, the demons, which were both good and bad, just become bad. Do you guys follow that? So it used to be a general term for just spirits in general. In fact, we have early Christian writings that still call good spirits, using the word daemon, like Clement of Alexandria.
Like Elohim.
Yeah, things change, right? So there have to be very careful. And then later on, what will happen is the word angel will be applied to that of the good spirits, and then the word demon is reserved for the negative ones. So you're going to have a hierarchy then of demons and angels. Wait a minute, Dr. Rifo, you just said that they're not connected to Christianity. Yes, but you're going to have Judaism and Christianity influencing the conversation. And so later on, Hermetic writings will actually refer to good demons as angels without thinking, hey, this is Christian. It's a situation of language. Is this helpful? Yeah, okay. So there you have it. Okay, so there is a connection. So daemons are simply personifications of these sympathetic energies. Daemons are simply personifications of these sympathetic energies, right? They may either be good or they may be bad, but they are emanations possessing neither a body or a soul. Got it? Neither body or a soul. There's the personification. Got it? So there you have it. So, but the ones that are not so good, they do have personalities, and they will attempt to subjugate humanity to their will. They will, if there is something negative that's going on in the mind of God that seems to be showing through the planets and through all things, there's like there's a negative trend. The daemons who are not so good are going to try to influence humans to not follow the higher path and to go with fate and go the negative direction. Does that make sense? You guys got it? Go with the lower flow. So there is a link between fate and the stars. Okay. Now, as I said before, looking at the heavens above was considered a religious act, right? A truly worthy object of contemplation, and to see the beauty of the heavens. And they see this as presented as a reflection of God, yet it was considered so unknown. I'm going to give you now a quote. I promised. So here it is. So Julian, some people call Julian the Great, other people call Julian the Apostate. He was a Neoplatonic Roman emperor who ruled after Constantine the Great. So you're going to have Constantine, who's a Christian emperor, Constantius, and of course the other two sons, Christian emperors, although Arian, right? But then after that, you're going to have a 3-year rule of Julian, who's pagan, who is also very much into Neoplatonism, but he was also into Hermeticism. And he ruled from 361 to 363. He says this about the stars, as we have the sound of the truck going here. So he says as follows. We're probably going to lose the atmosphere, right? Talk about the stars, and the exhaust comes over us and we start coughing. It's like, okay. All right, so he says this. He said, from my childhood, I was consumed by a passionate longing for the rays of the God, and my mind was utterly absorbed from my tenderest years in his ethereal light. Not only did I desire to gaze intently upon it, but if I ever happened to find myself out of doors during a cloudless, clear night, isn't that us right now? Cloudless, clear night, right? I would leave everything else aside and devote all my time to the beauties of the heavens, oblivious of both what anyone might say to me and what myself was doing. I gave the impression of being seized by excessive curiosity for these things, and I was already taken for an astrologer when the down was scarcely upon my chin. And that celestial light utterly dazzles me, exciting me and stimulating me to contemplate it, to the point that, having as of yet not read no special treatise on the subject, I had myself discovered that the motion of the moon is the opposite of that of the universe. It led what I already said that I attested to believe. Isn't that beautiful? Because I mean, you can connect with this person who lived in the 4th century, and it's just like he is here now. We think the same way when we look at the stars above. Okay, so there you have it. So astrology is very important, right? Very important. Second of the technical hermetica is alchemy. Now, I did a whole talk on alchemy, and I know I don't want to do the whole talk all over again, but I want to say that so much of alchemy early on is connected to the writings of Hermes Trismegistus. And boy, I feel that gas. Do you feel that gas? Yeah. Whew. Okay. Oh my goodness. It's like, please get a smog check. It's like I'm choking up here. So just don't light a match. Or I'll become ethereal. The flames will actually, that may be kind of cool looking. It's like Dr. Rietveld talks about hermeticism, and we talked about alchemy. He suddenly exploded into flame.
Spontaneous
combustion, and he was never seen again. It's like, wow. And you'll like maybe you'll put a little monument here and start a cult. He's right now, and then of course you'll have the scientists will say, I think it was the exhaust from the truck that did it. It's like, no, true believers. Okay, so I'm copying here. Okay, alchemy. So alchemy, practice of alchemy is pursued for the purpose of extending life. Okay, so various elixirs were said to be able to bestow eternal life. Accordingly, both Thoth and the related Hermes Trismegistus drank the white drops of liquid gold and thus became immortal. So I told you the fact that Hermes Trismegistus, lived a human life, according to some people. He lived for so long, he shared a wisdom to others. And then eventually, through alchemy, he became a god himself. Does that make sense? Through alchemical process. So that's a connection here. Alchemy, of course, was the art from which base metals are supposed to be transmuted into silver and gold. But while the alchemists, their techniques seem to be that of a jeweler or a glassmaker or the like, the reality is when they took a look at all physical objects, they believed that there was a lifeless base. There's a lifeless base within all material things. Got it? Lifeless base with all material things. And then within that, there is a soul. So all material things have a soul, and that soul is what makes a thing a thing. That soul within the material base makes it into a gem or an animal or a human. Does that make, you guys got it? So it is that, so there is a soul with the rock, right? So what you want to do is through various processes, you want to manipulate that soul within the material base so that it will become something else. And so the idea is you could turn basic metals into silver and gold by manipulating the soul. Of course, there's all these interesting strategies, metallurgic and otherwise magical, to change that soul into something else. And this was used as a metaphor, a spiritual metaphor, but also in some sense, in actuality, through spiritual practices where we can, hey, look, we have our physical base, our body, material, we have our soul, so we can practice strategies and techniques to change our soul so that it can become something different and be released from the material world. You guys got it? So you can do certain practices to release that soul. And that's a lot about what goes on with the alchemical hermetic writings. So you change that. Of course, obviously, philosophy will later follow. We'll give you a few examples that are pretty cool, and then we'll just keep on going because, again, we have a limited period of time. In fact, what I'll do is I will skip to Zosimus of Panapolis. I told you a story before in another talk, but you know, well, I do want to say that there in Hermetic writings, the alchemical writings, there are many women that were involved in the Hermetic materials. We talked about this in an earlier talk, but I will just mention that you're going to have a certain Cleopatra, the alchemist, who is connected to the philosopher's stone, and so she's important. We found some papyrus where we see the image of a serpent eating its own tail. That's connected. You've probably seen this image before. She is the one. What happens is that she connects to the idea of she interconnects with Jewish ideas in many ways, but she also invented what's called the alembic, which was an early tool for chemistry. In fact, a modern version is used today to distill alcohol. so yeah, you know, alcohol is kind of like alchemy, right? I mean, you drink it, and it's spirits after all, right? And does it change who you are? Yeah, but then the next day you wake up with a bad headache. But you know, but there is something to it. Okay, but that person's important. Mary the Jewess is another person involved in the Hermetic, technical Hermetica. She also was known to talk about the union of opposites, of male and female, and how they work together. And of course, obviously, she created this jar that was specially sealed, and that's of course hermetically sealed.
That's where that.
Yeah, so she's the one who came up with that. Yeah, just just fun little bits and pieces. Yeah. So what happens is that I'm kind of skipping over to this. Okay, so find it here. Of course, okay, and let's go to Zosimus. Zosimus does basically. He's a 4th century writer, and I brought him up before because I love this guy. This guy is one of my favorite writers because he is just so completely obscure and strange and misunderstood. And you'll see in a few seconds. And he has the weirdest dreams that drove Carl Jung crazy. So when Carl Jung read this, he's going, "Oh, this guy has some things going on there," And because Zosimus, here's a man. Think about living in, going on, living, in the 4th century, and he's writing down his dreams. And he's writing down a whole bunch of them, which is, what is a 4th century, Hermetic writer dream about? Well, you're going to find out right now. And it'll also give you the answers and clues to how alchemy works within a Hermetic idea. By the way, I do want to say that Zosimus of Panapolis, he quotes and says he quotes from Hermetic writings. So this is not me just kind of cobbling things together. So he kind of quotes, for example, and it says it about the Hermetic writing on the chalice and so forth. So he does talk about this. Okay, so here it goes. Here's the dream, one of many. Okay, so here's so here it is. The dream goes as follows. He falls asleep. I'm hoping that happens. And he sees 15, and in some cases it's 7 steps. It's kind of vague, kind of goes 15, 7, 15, 7. And it leads up to a bowl-shaped altar where stands a priest. The priest is standing there, and the priest says to him, "I have accomplished," the priest talking now, "I have accomplished the descent of these 15 steps of darkness, the ascent of the steps of light. And he who sacrifices himself becomes the sacrificial victim. Okay. He says, casting away the coarseness of the body and consecrated priest by necessity, I am made perfect as a spirit. I am Aeon, the priest of the sanctuaries, and I have submitted myself to the unendurable torment. For there came one in haste in the early morning, who overpowered me and pierced me through with the sword and dismembered me in accordance to the rule of harmony. And he drew off the skin of my head with the sword he was holding, and mingled the bones with the pieces of the flesh, and caused them to be burned with fire that he held in his hand, till I perceived by the transformation of the body that I have become spirit. All I can say is yikes. That's like, so the priest is telling me he's having this dream where he's being cut into little pieces, right? Being dismembered, and he's watching his transformation, his physical transformation, and the release of the spirit. What's going on? And that is my unendurable torment. In fact, here Aeon cries blood and melts into the opposite of himself. It's pretty dramatic. You can see where Carl Jung says, okay, there's something going on here. I don't know what's going on. We're not done yet. You mean this dream's going to get even stranger? It is. Yeah. I'm not sure what he had for dinner the night before. They did have anchovies in those days, and some garum sauce, too much garum sauce on his flatbread. I don't know, overindulged, but there it is. So what happens is as follows. Later on, Zosimus saw the same priest in the dream in the guise of a man of copper. The guise of a man of copper, presiding over the altar bowl, which was filled with bubbling water, and in that water he saw many people burnt but living. Okay, so now that the guy is made out of copper. In fact, one of them cries out and says, this is eerie. So now you see this big chalice and this transformation, and they're swimming around and they're crying out. Is this interesting? Yeah. Okay. So it says this thing that's half burnt cries out and says, the sight that you see is the entrance and the exit and the transformation. Those who seek to obtain the art of moral perfection enter here and become spirits by escaping from the body. Then a bystander in the dream explains that it is the place where is carried out that which is called preserving or embalming the body. Remember, this is Egypt. Preserving or embalming the body. For those men who wish to obtain spiritual perfection, come hither and become spirits, fleeing the body. Therefore I said to him, are you a spirit? And he answered, and he said, a spirit and a guardian of spirits. As for the priest, meanwhile, remember the priest that's standing by? He is a man of copper, but you will not find as a man of copper, for he has changed his nature and now has become a man of silver. And then, if you wish, after a little time, you will see he is a man of gold. What is happening in this process is through the story, through the set story and the belief in the story, the transformation is happening of the spirit. Does that make sense? The transformation in this dreamlike way where this person's going from copper, and he's going to silver, and he's going to gold. And when he gets to gold, he's going through the process of change. And of course, he ascends and descends the 15 and then 7 steps. And guess what those 7 steps represent? Yes, the 7 astral bodies. As they ascend, he changes his form, and eventually he goes to the 8th realm, this priest, and he is released into joy. But this world is a place of torment and pain. And so the physical world is fighting against you, but it is, as you fight against it, it acts as a natural alchemy, right? because you're fighting these various forces, and it's changing the nature of your spirit within the material base. I thought this is a great representation of that idea set out in a very elaborate way, but it gives that meaning. And of course, it's a guide for Zosimus. It's like, hey, this could happen to you. Okay. All right. So let's keep on going there. So let's move on to this. Of course, he quotes from the Parmenides of the Mixing Bowl. Okay, so Thurgy. Okay, so the Thurgetic writings of Hermes Trismegistus. This is interesting. Yeah, well, look at my time here. This is the discipline of learning the operation of the gods, and then to create an alliance with these gods, archangels, and angels, so that via one's actions, they recognize and support one's intentions. What is interesting about Thurgy is that, this is the science or art of divine works. If you're doing this with positive, good spirits, higher spirits, that's, of course, Thurgy. If you're doing this with evil spirits, that's, of course, Goetia. If you're interested, Goetic magic. You guys are familiar with that term. And, of course, there you have it. So what will happen is those who are followers of Hermes Trismegistus, basically you have God who is Lord and Father. Although I think it's very interesting because according to those who follow this belief system, God is both genders, both male and female. So they use the word God as a convenient phrase, but you'll see a masculine or feminine pronouns being used intermixed. Does that make sense? So he is androgynous. Okay, and of course below, of course, you have a plethora of gods below that. Okay, Hermes tells Asclepius that these deities are fashioned. This is going to be interesting. Fashioned from herbs and stones and spices containing the occult power. In fact, he says that you have the one God above. This one God is connected, of course, to the monad. He is the one, he is the light, he is truth, he is perfection, he is beauty, he is knowledge, he is all these wonderful things. You have the emanations, right, that go from this, right, the intelligible realm, and you have gods that is emanating from him, but further down in the mundane realm, you have other gods that we make. What? We make gods? Yes. So what happens is that he's telling us that, yeah, you have the one God, you have the multiplicity, and then you have gods that we make and create, and they actually become real gods and goddesses. And so he says that, again, of herbs, stones, spices containing the occult power. And if you would know why they are diverted through the frequent sacrifices, hymns, songs of praise, and sweet sounds that imitate heaven's harmony, it is so that the celestial element, which has been enticed into the image by repeated celestial rites, may in happiness endure its long sojourn among humankind. That then is how man makes gods, unquote. So what's going on here? It basically says that if you believe that this object or this image is a god and you worship it and you put a special intention into it, but you do it with a good heart, not with manipulation, then an aspect of that through sympathetic magic will come down and move into it, because remember, we talked about even in alchemy, right? You have the material base and you got the soul of it, right? So what happens is that you're changing the soul of the object, and through this transformation, it becomes an aspect that's divine. So many of those practitioners are Hermes Trismegistus. Even Julian did this, the Apostate or the Great. There's an image of Hecate, and he was in Asia Minor at that time. And what he did is he used these rites to make Hecate move and talk and speak. And there was an aspect of it in there. Ooh, kind of spooky, huh? But so you're ensouling these objects. So it's no longer just simply a material object anymore. It's like it has an aspect of the divine. It's not God, right? It's not also the lower gods, the Olympians, but it's still a spirit that's like a god. Is this interesting?
Who was it? Who animated Hecate?
Okay. That was Julian the Apostate. Julian, no, Maximus of Ephesus.
Oh, okay.
Maximus of Ephesus, who was with Julian the Apostate. They're all friends. Thank you. Maximus of Ephesus, who was with Julian. But anyway, so there you have it. And so you have these connections. Is that fascinating? Yeah. Okay. So we keep going. So what happens is that God still is the source of all the other gods and goddesses, spirits, daemons who emanate from him. And he's worshipped with thanksgiving in a proper order, not with incense or sacrifice, because that only applies to those below. So you do incense or sacrifices to the gods you had made. You do incense and sacrifice, various rituals to the ones that are the gods. But as soon as you get to the monad, the one, no more incense and that sense or sacrifice. In this case, now it is hymns of praise, it's choruses of singing, or it is being in divine silence. And so it's very much akin to Christianity when it comes to that idea. Isn't that fascinating? At that point, we move into, okay, I can see where there's correlations to this idea. Okay. So there we have it. And of course, I have mystical writings here. I'll tell you one. If you want to be initiated, here it is. There's an initiation into the belief system of Hermes Trismegistus, and I actually have the formula here. I'm not sure if you want me to read it. You guys want me to read it? Yeah, go for it. Yeah. Yeah. Let's see. Okay. So, all right. So, as long as nothing happens to me, I'll be okay. Yeah. Here's something. Okay. Here's the worst part. When I do the sounds, these sounds are accurate. So I just want to tell you that they have the sounds, and so I'll do the sounds too. So I make the weird noises. It will be the noises. Tell me if this sounds familiar when I do it. Okay, so here it is. I'm kind of scared, especially in front of people. I don't know. Okay, I call upon you. Okay, who rules over the kingdom of power, whose word is an offering of light, whose words are immortal, eternal, immutable, whose will produces life for forms everywhere, whose nature gives form to substance, by whom souls, powers, and angels are moved, whose word reaches all who exist, whose providence reaches all who exist, who produces everyone, who has divided the eternal realm among spirits, who has created everything, who being self within self supports everything, to whom one speaks in silence, being perfect, the invisible God, whose image is moved when it is managed, and it is so managed, who is exalted above majesty, mighty one in power, who is superior to those honored. O E O A O A O A O U O. That's it. That really was it. How's that? So you notice all the vowels there? Yeah. There's another one too, but but there's a few of these. But yeah, is that cool? So it kind of sounds like a chant of a certain kind, Anyway, so there you have it. Okay. So now we move on. Let's see how much time we have here. Okay. All right. So we have to move Basically, the soul seeks purification and perfection through that of God. And this is known as the baptism of the intellect, right? And we're also supposed to give a mental sacrifice, a logica theora, and that is given through hymns of praise and thanksgiving. So there you have it. In fact, the highest form, according to Periphery, in his work called the Abstentia, the highest form of worship is the silent, pure reflection of the sage directed towards the one. This is a holy sacrifice, the hymn, because basically the intelligible gods, the offspring of the supreme God, one should only offer hymns or words at this point. So no longer material things, but hymns or words, because the sound is more important than material things. The intelligible gods, they don't need material things. They don't need material offerings. Why would they need that? Because, and the God that's above all, it doesn't need material things. It doesn't need a sheep or a goat or anything like that. It's beyond that. So the only thing you can offer is the fact that you are you. You know, celebration, singing, worship, and also the fact of your silence, because when you're silent, then you listen. And through that silence arises transformation. Cool, huh? Okay, anyway, so there it is. So no first fruits, burnt sacrifices, and so on, okay? So absolute purity, silence. Okay, Iamblichus, of course, talks about various methods of ascent into the hierarchy, but we won't go there because, again, okay, now we're moving on to the Hermetic philosophical writings. I'm so happy we've got here because I skipped a whole bunch of pages on alchemy, but I want to make sure that we get here. So the Philosophical Hermetica is ascribed to the school of Ammonius Saccas. Ammonius Saccas. Now that's important. Ammonius Saccas. Okay, so what? Who's Ammonius Saccas? He lived in the latter 2nd century CE. He lived in Egypt. Okay. He's credited for writing the Philosophical Hermetica. Did he write it? I don't know. He may or may not. But as a historian, I have to say it's still important that they think he did. Does that make sense? It's still important that the perception of ancient times is they believe that he did. Okay. Now here we go. A little bit further is that Ammonius Saccas was also considered the true founder of Neoplatonism. Now we're getting even more interesting. It's like, wait, this guy did the Hermetic writings, and he's a founder of the next step, which for Middle Platonism, which is Neoplatonism. And Plotinus, the famous Plotinus, was one of his students. Another one of his students was Origen of Alexandria, the famous Christian Neoplatonist. So this guy is kind of a big deal, right? Ammonius Saccas is like, well, you know, he really founds the idea of Neoplatonism because he's trying to create a coherent system that Plotinus later on takes on, and Iamblichus and Periphery go together on that one. Of course, Neoplatonism directly influences Christianity when it comes to articulation of the Trinity in the Council of Nicaea, as well as the Council of Ephesus, Chalcedon too. These ideas, you wouldn't have the relationship of Father, Son, and Holy Spirit without these ideas. And who would say that quickly and fast? Well, that would be Basil the Great, Clement, that would be Gregory of Nyssa, that would be Gregory of Nazianzus, that would be the ones that were all part of that during the 4th century, famous saints of the Eastern Church and Western Church. This is interesting. So Ammonius Saccas is kind of fascinating. Well, he taught Greek philosophy, but the ancient says he also taught Indian philosophy. Why? He's in Alexandria. Indian, as in India? Well, yeah. What do you mean? The word Saccas. Take a look at the name Saccas. Take a look at the Saccas. It's a transliteration of the word Sakyas, which is, of course, a ruling clan of India, which is connected to Gautama Buddha. You see, people don't know that Alexandria And Egypt was very close to India. Why? Because during the time of Claudius Caesar, they had figured out the monsoon, and they had travels constantly between India and of course Egypt. And the Shramanas, these famous philosophers, went back and forth. We have graves of these Indian mystics and those who are teaching the Indic philosophy all over Asia Minor. In fact, one Indian mystic, he burned himself alive at the Olympic Games in 165 in front of everybody. So India and the beliefs of India were very obvious. Well, guess what? This guy is part Indian. You have somebody who is, he's Indian as well as Egyptian, and he helped Hermes Trismegistus, the writings there, and Neoplatonism. Oh no, that means, yeah, there's a direct connection to Eastern philosophy within these systems of thought. Neoplatonism, of course, Christianity. Is this fascinating? You're learning too much now. You're dangerous now. You know, too dangerous, right? And of course, his influence you can readily see in Origen of Alexandria. The famous Origen, he talks about what? Reincarnation, right? He's a Christian. He talks about reincarnation and the fact that, obviously that God's love is irresistible. You can't, and so that means that ultimately God will win over the devil. And so, hey, you may not follow God and his word in this life, but when you die and you are reincarnated, maybe the next time, not that time, maybe the next time, but eventually, because you have the same soul, just many bodies. That's Clement of Alexandria. They call that belief system Origenism. And it caused a big problem in the church in the 5th and the 6th centuries. It split churches up together. Is this making sense? You can see where these ideas come from. So yes, you're going to feel in the Hermetic writings, you're going to feel, hey, this feels a little Eastern. Just, write down for my chant. Right? You're going to, oh yeah, okay, there we go. Okay. So what will happen is, I just summarized all this. This is great. Okay, so we're going to go into some details. So let's dive in. So we end this talk with some exact details of how the universe works. Would that be okay?
Sure.
All right.
So I came for it.
Oh, here he is. Okay. So God is depicted in the Poimandres. The Poimandres, by the way, the Corpus Hermeticum. Poimandres is basically the word man shepherd placed together. Although some people will say it's actually the Egyptian word Peminet Re, which means knowledge of Ra, but there's controversy over that. The same word, two different interpretations. But anyway, this work is a revelation of God, which is depicted as coming upon a seeker willing to contemplate higher things. And the work starts out as follows. It says, it chanced once on a time, my mind was meditating on the things that are. I think I do that all the time, right? My thoughts were raised to a great height, the senses of my body being held back, just as men who are weighed down with sleep after a fill of food or from fatigue of the body. Yeah. I thought that a being more than vast, in size beyond all bounds, called out my name and said, what would you hear and see? And what have you in mind to learn and know? Okay, so that's kind of creepy. So he's hearing this booming voice from this giant something. And I said, who are you? And he responded, I am Poimandres, mind of all masterhood. I know what you desire, and I am with you everywhere. That's pretty much everywhere. I reply, I long to learn the things that are and comprehend their nature and know God. That is, I said, that I desire to hear. He answered me back, hold in your mind all you would know, and I will teach you. Even with these words, his aspect changed, and straight away, in the twinkling of an eye, yes, actually, he used the word twinkling of an eye. I love that, right? All things were open to me, and I see a vision limitless. All things turn into light, sweet, joyous light, and I became transported as I gazed. So he sees a great light. One aspect of Hermes Trismegistus and of the teachings is that you have this emanation of God that is light. God is light. And you can see that within Christianity. Okay, here now you can start seeing a little bit more of the cosmogony. So you have this revelation, and you have the sight of light and bliss. And this is how the universe is created. You got light and bliss. But then a little darkness came settling down on part of it. A little darkness came settling down. And so it was awesome and gloomy. And it coiled its sinuous folds, it says. And I thought that this darkness looked much like a coiling snake. And then the darkness, which looked like a snake, descended down from the light and turned into moist nature. And it was tossed about like an ocean, a storm going about. And what happens is that it says it belched out smoke as from fire and groaning forth wailing sounds that begs all descriptions. So you got the separation of the light and the darkness, right? So God now gets involved, and he divides the material realm into 4 elements: earth, air, fire, water, upon which the word from the light descends and organizes them. The word. Now, the word is logos. It is the same word that's used by Philo of Alexandria to describe that aspect moving from the monad. It's the same word that was used by Heraclitus of Ephesus as far back, of course, going into the 500s BCE. It is the same one that you see at the prologue of the Gospel of John. You know, it is the same one that is used throughout Hermetic writings. Although when it comes to Plato, he chooses to use the word demiurge. But the funny thing is, within Hermetic writings, you got a logos and a demiurge. So, but we're not there yet. Got it? So you got this logos, which emanates forth, and it creates the elements. Thereupon, of course, there is an outcry of light. The holy word, the logos, descended on that nature, right? And upwards to the height from moist nature, leaped forth pure fire. Light was it, swift and active too. And so what's going to happen, air also being light flowed after the fire. And so now you're going to have the separation of the elements, and the fire goes above and the air goes above, but the earth and the water, they kind of hang together. So now you have the organization of these elements. Now, Poemades reveals who he is. He says that light, right? That logos, right? That light, he said, am I. Even mind, or nous, the mind of God, the first God, who was prior to the moist nature, which appeared from darkness. And the light word logos that appeared from mind nous is the Son of God. So he is this mind of God and this nous and the spirit from which comes forth as him the logos, the divine one, right? You guys got it? So he is the light. Told you you're going to learn a lot. So here we go. Okay. So this light arrives from the mind of the All High Father, right? And it moves down. So basically, it looks like the beginning of something, right? So you got the one, the monad, and then you have this first mind that emerges from the monad, which is also the logos, which is also the light, and it's organizing the elements from the realm of the moist nature, right? Given organization, and I mentioned the fact, of course, you got the fire, and then you got the air, and then, of course, below, you got the earth and the water together. Now, according to this, the 4 elements are created via God's will and purpose, but it arises from her, Like, what? Arises from her. Who's her? From nature. So now you have this organization below of the elements, and it's connecting to this. It's called nature, and it's a she. So you got the realm of she. So now you got, and the spirit of she permeates the earth. Well, it looks almost like a trinity, right? Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit as the she. Is that interesting? Because in Hebrew, shokma, right, is feminine, right? Ruah is feminine when it comes to spirit, right? Shekinah is feminine. So the spirit in Hebrew is typically feminine. And so you're going to see that even in this, the realm of nature is a she. And so from the will of God, nature received the word, the logos, and gazing upon the beautiful cosmos, did copy it, making herself into the cosmos by means of her own elements and by the births of souls. And so you're hearing directly the theology of Hermeticism right from the writings. So as opposed to me saying, oh, it says this, it says that, you're hearing directly from the writings. Isn't that great? So there's no misunderstanding. Okay, so then the watery substance, having received the word, the logos, was fashioned into the ordered cosmos, the elements being separated out from it, and from the elements came forth the brood of living creatures. Fire unmixed leapt forth from the watery substance and rose aloft, and of course talks about the separation. Next, the seven heavens are created after that, which are understood to be the spheres known as Mercury, Venus, Jupiter, Saturn, the sun, and the moon. And through their circular orbits, fate comes about. And the first mind, the mind which is light and life. I'm actually reading here, light and life, which is both male and female, brought forth another now at this point. And that is the mind, the maker of things, which is the demiurge. So now, at this point, now you're getting the second mind, who is the maker of the material universe. But it's interesting because you already have the spheres created. So that's not the material universe. This is part of the intelligible realm. Got it? But now you have the maker being created. That's the second mind. And he is in the realm of the fire and the air and the spirit. He's higher up. And he becomes the ruler of these seven administrators who enclose the realm of sense perception. Next, of course, living creatures are created by nature. And finally, this is one of the most interesting parts about Hermeticism, and it sets it apart from the other systems. God creates humanity, man. But he is the image of both male and female together combined. But mind and father of all, who is life and light, gave birth to man, a being like to himself. He took delight as a being of his own offspring. He took delight in him, and he said, okay, I like you so much. You see this demiurge here. He's making things. You can hang out with the demiurge. This is where it gets weird. Like, what? So now you have this divine androgynous human hanging out with the demiurge side by side. Isn't that interesting? It's almost like, and in many cases, they see them as brothers. Isn't that fascinating? They say, hey, we're hanging out together, right? And so he feels this androgynous human who's perfect, he's liking this creative process too. And he wants to get involved. I know, again, you're going, wow, this is a different story. I know, it's a twist. So what happens is that he breaks through the sphere because this human wants to connect because he's so excited. He wants to bring the beauty of God above to nature below. He wants to show her how beautiful God is. He can't resist it. The demiurge is like, yeah, I'll just hang out, make things. The divine human goes, no, I want to share it. He goes down And what happens? It's called love. Nature looks at the beautiful form of God, smiled at the love of man, and showed the reflection of that form in the water and its shadow on the earth. And he's seen this form, a form like to his own in earth and water, loved it as well. Wow, you know, it's really beautiful. It's like, it's you, it's your reflection. Oh, okay. Well, but so what he does is he goes, he's attracted to it. And he basically dives in to the realm of nature. And she was in love, because love is, what is love? Why, this like, what's love got to do with it, right? What is love? It's attraction, right, towards something, toward an object that you want to have. It's a desire, right? And it keeps on going because you keep wanting it. Well, this divine man who is androgynous falls in love with nature, and it's like this endless pursuit of love, and this energy comes together. And it says right here that nature, when he got him, with whom she was in love, wrapped him up in her clasp, and they were mingled in one. They became one. As a result, humans are unlike all other creatures on earth, because of that, we have a body that's made from nature, but we have a soul that is made from above, a divine soul. Does that make sense? So the idea is we need to get back. But unfortunately, we start to suffer, right? We start to suffer. And so Parmenides says that what happens now is they make 7 bisexual men, they call it, or basically 7 androgynies from there. And then they came about. And then following that, you have the parting of gender from there. And as a result of that, you have procreation. Okay, so originally we're just all one, right? So the idea is that we have to turn away from carnal desires, turn away from the ideas of the flesh. Now we're getting into this ascetic idea. And we need to purify ourselves and focus upon nature, the goodness of nature, that is God, in order to make that great return, right? In the sensible world, we are drawn into the draught of death, yet mind or nous, to recognize this reality, we are the light and life, which belongs to man, and we go from there. So, of course, we have to keep aloof from the avenging demons who try to snare us along the way, because it gets even more fascinating in the fact that I told you that these demons are connected to these chains. They themselves don't have a soul. They're connected to these things. So when we think in our mind, this is another fascinating idea, and that is all thoughts are actually not in our head. What? All thoughts come from somewhere else. And if they're good thoughts, they come from a higher realm that possesses us. And if they're evil thoughts, they come from a demonic realm. So we got to make sure that these thoughts don't, it's like, ooh, wow, okay. So the idea is that your mind can be controlled by good or by evil. So when we ascend to the light, I'm going to tell you what happens. When you finally get to a point through alchemy, through other kinds of exercises, through Theurgy. Remember, Theurgy is the idea where you don't tell God what to do. You ask God, you make a request, and you ask in a very sensible and kindly way, could you do this? Could you do this? Without the expectation that you have to make him do it, right? You can't tell God what to do. If you do that, that's considered a blessing. That's a higher energy. They say that Theurgy can actually, if you keep talking to God through this methodology, it can actually purify you where you can almost instantaneously go to the higher realm, which is interesting. It almost sounds like again, Eastern religions. Are you seeing that? Okay, so finally, I guess I got to get you guys back to the light. So let's conclude on getting you out of this material realm. You guys ready? All right. So to ascend to the light, Parmenides says, at the dissolution of the material body, you first yield up the body first to be changed. And the visible form you once bore is no longer seen. And you yield up your vital spirit to above, to the atmosphere. And the bodily senses go back to their own sources, becoming parts of the universe and entering into fresh combinations to do other work. I think that's interesting as it is. So the material form, it falls away, and that will be now reconstituted and used for other things. Just keeps on going. Thereupon, the man mounts upward through the structure of the heavens. And thereupon, and to the first zone of heaven, the sphere of the moon, he gives up the force which works to increase and that which works to decrease. So basically, he gives up the ability of procreation. He's not going to make any more of him, right? To the second zone, which is the sphere of Venus, he gets rid of evil cunning. No more evil cunning. To the third zone, which is the sphere of Mars, he gives away, gets rid of his lust. To the fourth zone, the sphere of Saturn, his domineering arrogance. It's really negative, I know. Okay. To the fifth zone, which is the sphere of Mercury, unholy daring and rash audacity. To the sixth zone, the sphere of the sun, evil strivings after wealth. And then, of course, the seventh zone, the sphere of Jupiter, the falsehood which lies in wait to do harm. Having stripped off all that has been wrought upon him by the structure of the heavens, he ascends to the substance of the eighth heaven. Being now possessed by his own proper power, he sings together with those who dwell here, hymning the Father, and they are there, rejoice with him at his coming. And being made like to those with whom he dwells, he hears the powers who are above the substance of the eighth sphere, singing praises to God with a voice that is theirs alone. And thereafter, each in his turn, they mount upward to the Father. They give themselves up to the powers and become powers themselves as they enter unto God. This is the good, and this is the consummation for those who have gnosis, or knowledge. And there you have it, right? And there you have the conclusion of my talk for today. So I'm happy I got you out of the material realm. I got you to the chorus of heavens, and you're singing away. And so it's a beautiful, happy ending. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
You're in seventh heaven. Well, we need to get you to the eighth heaven. Okay. Any questions? Oh, I got to take pictures of people. So, all right. So,
There's a lot of Gnosticism.
you see that? So let's see. How do we do this? So I'll take this side first. I'll take myself. That's not good. You know, and I fall in love with it. Oh no, he's lost. Okay, I'll do this here. Ready, set, and go. Yeah, we do. Yeah, yeah, because C.S. Lewis was a Neoplatonist. People don't know that. So, and I heard that from his adopted son, Douglas Gresham. So, yeah, he's a Platonist. So, if you take a look at, especially the Voyage of the Dawn Treader, it's pure and simple Platonism. Yeah, but even a Space Odyssey series, you'll have that those ideas. So, did you guys learn a lot, right? Hopefully, I got to some of the mysteries, maybe some of them. So, you now know the utterances in order to ascend. You know, yes?
Uh,
Ascending? Oh, okay.
yeah. It's like, when you were talking about the cosmogony, I'm not sure if I missed something. Why does perfection create imperfection?
Okay,
Do
so
any of them go there and explain that?
well, yeah, that's a problem because you're seeing. So basically, the idea is if you have something, you automatically have the absence of something. So in order to define something that is, you got to have something that isn't. Otherwise, it ceases to be what it is. It's one of those terrible philosophy course questions that become circumlocutions. We're going on. It's like, well, how can you have God? You know, you can't have God without the absence thereof of God. Even though God permeates all things, you still have to have, if you have order, you have to have something that is not order. Because order has to be ordered. You have to go through the process of ordering something. So you got to have something that's chaos, huh? Huh?
Can't have happiness without sadness.
Can't have happiness without sadness. I know it's. Now remember, when it comes to writers of the Hermetic writings, sure you got Ammonius Saccas, who's brilliant, but you also have your regular, Egyptian or other Syrian farmer, merchant who believes this. So when you read some of this stuff, you're kind of going, hey, there seems to be a contradiction here, and they really didn't think about certain ideas in a deep way, because it's not as systematic as if you're reading Plotinus, especially when it comes to, I hate to say, the Hermetic writing sometimes gets a little bit like, ooh, I don't know what's going on here. In fact, in the copy that I have, there are interpolations where somebody decided to add something into it that has nothing to do with the topic at all. And they thought, oh, this sounds good. And it messes up the whole idea. So if that makes sense. So when it comes to these ideas, not always the deepest of intellects, but at the same time, we're still back to the earlier context of that which is order, and the ordering principle has to have something that it orders. It has to have that which needs to be put together. And so there you have it. Does that make sense?
It sounds like other theology that can't escape existential facts of their lives.
Right. Yeah.
Dr. Wrightfeld,
Yes.
the people on the Zoom are asking if you could repeat the question before you answer it, because they're not.
Oh, okay. So the question was, if I can remember the question now, is that how come there was, what was it? What was the question? I forgot it.
Oh, imperfection proceeding from perfection.
Yeah, that's the question. Yeah,
Okay.
imperfection proceeding from imperfection. Why is that?
Yeah.
Sorry, I got so far away on the topic, I didn't lost my train of thought. Any other questions? Yes.
That's theology, or is that
Theology.
yeah, like is it like it's like
The origin, how we know what we know. Yeah.
but is it is it a logic that has a goal from man have a pattern that's at the end going to obtain God?
Okay, so the idea is there a logic to us for the reason for us to emanate down and to emanate back?
Yes.
Yes, there is, and that's treaded upon a little bit in the Hermetic writings, and that is we're back to the idea of authenticity when it comes to recognition of that which is. So what will happen is that you're going to get this true worship from subject to object that is transformative, that you wouldn't ordinarily have if it didn't go outside of itself to experience itself. And by the way, you're going to see that even within the Kabbalah, the origins of things. You're going to go into the idea of how can you be recognized or understood by a soft, right? How can you be understood unless you go outside of yourself to be able to perceive it? Because God is so big, so beyond, right? But at a certain point, how can it be understood without something outside of itself to observe it, and to appreciate it, to venerate it, to praise it, and of course, in the more homespun hermeticists, into having lives of joy and contemplation and transformation as a result. Does that help? And I think I reiterated the question for you there already. So any other questions? That's a good question.
In the Gospel of John, there is a section that fits everything described.
The Gospel of John. Well, in the Gospel of John, yeah, aspects of the Gospel of John do fit in many ways with what I just talked about. You're going to have within Hermetic writings, within Middle Platonism, even within certain Gnostic systems, you're still going to have, as you see in the prologue of the Gospel of John, the concept of the monad or the one. In the beginning was the Word. You're going to have this idea of this emanation, which is the Logos, which is the Word coming from the one. And that is also going to be within Hermetic writings. That's going to be Middle Platonism and Gnosticism. You're going to have this one and the emanation of the Logos arising from the pleroma. All of them are going to have a pleroma. They will use the word pleroma. And so you're going to have that same concept. You're going to have also the idea of light as being connected to truth and perfection and knowledge. You're going to see that again, Middle Platonism, Hermeticism. You're going to see that Gnosticism, and you're going to see that in the New Testament. You're going to see the division between the realm of the spirit and the material realm. You're going to have the use of knowledge that reveals that we're going through the journey of the soul. All four of those have those ideas. So yeah, you're going to see lots of connections overlaying it. The big difference, as I see, is the opposing side. The opposing side. So you're going to have within Middle Platonism, many cases, and Hermeticism, the other side can be manipulative, it can be fate, it can do evil things, but it's not always intrinsically evil. The world is just the absence of good. But when it comes to Gnosticism and when it comes to Christianity, the opposite of good is evil. So you have that dualistic idea of good and evil, which is interesting, which also connects to another belief system called Zoroastrianism, which I think is fundamentally interesting for another reason, because Zoroastrianism, certainly the ideas do connect to Hermeticism, and those are the kinds of Hermetic writings where I say that some of them slip in the evil concept. I think that maybe some Persians converted over in Egypt and they embraced the idea, right? And they kind of weeded in, put in their ideas. But for the most part, that is the big difference, is the object. You don't have also within Gnosticism and within Christianity, you have Satan. In Gnosticism, you got the demiurge, who is an evil demiurge. But when it comes in Platonism, you have a demiurge who's also understood as a logos, depending on your perspective, and that is not necessarily evil. Does that make sense? And the same thing in Middle Platonism and Hermeticism. Does that make sense? So there are differences. Hope that makes sense. Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Did I answer your question?
I was addressing a part of, I was thinking of a part of the Gospel of John. I think it's halfway through the Gospel where you spoke of the macrocosm and microcosm.
Yes.
They're within each other.
Yes.
There's a part of the Gospel of John where Jesus is talking to his Father.
Part of the Gospel of John where Jesus is talking to his Father.
Yeah, well, where the Father is sort of like the guiding force.
The Father is a guiding force.
But they are still one.
But they are
And
still
it
one.
expresses an interest in that those converted would also become one.
Those who convert will also become one.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you remember which?
Not right on top of my head, because I don't have much there. But the idea would be is that one as far as part of the body of Christ. Of course, that's using kind of a Pauline cheat sheet, because but you have the idea of being part of the heavenly kingdom, of the kingdom that is at hand, the kingdom that is foretold by John the Baptist, and so you'll become one with that. It doesn't necessarily mean that you become one as in you lose your unique identity within the Christian context. There's always this idea within Orthodox Christianity where you still retain some semblance of your identity. In Hermeticism, of course, you do have your identity. You do ascend. You become part of this chorus of singing. By the way, some Gnostic systems have that same idea, the chorus of music. And then in Hermeticism, you actually go further up to the ninth sphere, and you connect with God, and you become then one of the powers. But you still don't become God. You become one of the powers. But in certain forms of Middle Platonism and Neoplatonism, sometimes, in many cases, you submerge and you lose yourself and you become part of God. And you see that also within Hinduism and in Buddhism. Does that make sense? But there's no God in Buddhism, but you still, you lose your attachment to all things. Does that make sense? So there is this. But in Hermeticism, you remain your unique self, and you also have that when it comes to in Christianity, you still have your unique self. So there's not the oneness in the sense of losing identity. Although you do become androgynous, there's no giving a marriage and so forth, right? There's none of that. So you do kind of return to the androgyny. You be as the angels, and the angels are androgynous, which is interesting because that kind of goes into that realm where, in the Hermetic writings, we are originally androgynous, and we lose our gender at the moon level. Remember I talked about going back again? Well, that's where we lose. All of a sudden, we're genderless at that point. So we do lose our gender, or we just become androgynous. Good question. Excellent question. Yes.
Are you personally a monist or a dualist?
I am my own personal beliefs. I think the best way to describe my beliefs, and I've done this in class before, is the best way I describe myself is I'm a mystic, which is, of course, a cheating way of saying I'm a scholar who can talk about all these topics without giving away exactly what I am. But because what I do is I teach every topic from a perspective of those people who believe it. But I teach a world religions course at Cal State Fullerton. And so what I do is I teach Hinduism as emphatically as I teach this topic. Or I talk about Buddhism as emphatically as this topic. Or, as you know, talk about Christianity as emphatically as this topic, or Islam. So I just kind of take on that persona, so to speak. Hope that helps. But so when it comes to my beliefs, it kind of goes into the realm of who knows. But I do believe in a sort of mysticism. And I could say that as there's forces are at work and moving here. Mysticism would be like, for example, I believe in a personal experience with the divine, with something that's beyond myself. I've had experiences, much like you would have with Rumi, much like you would have St. Francis of Assisi, Moses of Maimonides, these kinds of experiences that transcend different kinds of religious expressions and ideas. Do I have one set? I may not, but the perspective is that still I do believe in a mystikos. I do believe that there is such thing as a spiritual realm, that it does exist, and that I interact with it. Yeah. Is that helpful?
Well, set up that which is being shaped. Which
Yes.
just kind of moving to the dualism. So I wanted to ask, do you think there is a reconciliation? Is it monism? Or do you
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, repeat the question.
So could there be a monism? Is it possible? And my answer is yes. It's certainly possible. Yeah. Reconciling the dualism. In fact, you do have reconciliation in many of these belief systems, and you kind of see it. But then again, it's an interesting territory. Good question. Very good. Yeah. Thank you for being here. Yeah. Absolutely. Any other questions? All right. Well, have I done my job?
Yes.
Do you feel like you're satisfied? Satiation has come about, you know?
Do you want to talk about the next 3 months?
Oh, so I'm gonna be doing a news plug. What's right here? My next talk apparently is going to be, is this the right one? Look at the date here. September 9th. I'm doing a talk on Zoroastrianism.
Okay.
Yes, Zoroastrianism, which by the way, you'd probably be very interested in. But yeah. So we're gonna go so we'll be talking about that on the September 9th. Following that, on September 23rd, I'm going to be doing a talk on the goddess Persephone. So goddess Persephone. And then finally, oh, this is good. On October 7th, I'm going to be doing the Orphic Mysteries. Orphic Mysteries. So yeah. So these are fun. So Zoroastrianism, goddess Persephone, and Orphism. I think that's perfect.
Yeah.
So looking forward to seeing you guys again. And thank you for those who are online who are still there. I still see you guys there. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it. And I hope you enjoyed the talk. And if you had any questions,
No questions.
All right. Thank you for being here too. Thank you so much.